You know, for the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl rematch between the Giants and Patriots, we've been talking to some people within the industry, on Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. I got all my writers, but there's one guy, and then this guy stands above the pack for me. Not just because he's been oh so good to me, but just because, I mean, how often do you get a chance to talk to a bird with real hair? And I bring in the New Jersey Nets, soon to be the Brooklyn Nets play-by-play man, alongside CBS Sports play-by-play man and dynamic sports broadcaster Ian Eagle. Once again, Ian, thanks so much for chatting with me here.
John, my pleasure. Great to chat with you. I actually called between preseason, regular season, television, and radio playoffs, all in all, 31 NFL games this year.
Not too shabby. And hey, we were worried about calling none at one point.
We were worried about that and calling no basketball games either, so everything's worked out, fortunately.
I mean, you literally could have had an entire year off.
Yeah, it came pretty close, although it's amazing to see the interest level on the back end of this lockout in the NBA. I think, for whatever reason, they never got past that point of no return, and fans have shown that they're very curious about this season. This is such a different kind of year for the NBA, and if you look at the television numbers, they reflect the fact that people want to know what's happening in the league, and there just seems to be something going on every night, which is an offshoot of this truncated schedule. But you can put on the television and watch NBA action every single night and feel like there's no shortage of storylines.
And hey, when you get a team like the Nets who are 3, 4, 500 games under 500 and still in playoff contention, you know what? You get the job done, I'll say that at least. But
I appreciate it, John. Thank you.
No problem. And I'll tell you, you keep it entertaining on the NFL, NBA, the Australian Open, if you ever end up doing that again. I know you did tennis work in the past. And like I said, I think you should follow in Bruce Beck's steps next and go into the world of UFC. But that's something maybe best saved for the future for you. So let's get right underway with the Super Bowl talk here. I mean, the New York Giants, they get here at 9-7 versus the New England Patriots, who cruised to the Super Bowl at 13-3, even though they did need a little help towards the end. Two transversely opposite roads to the Super Bowl. What do you think about both teams and how they got to this point?
This is not your classic New England Patriots Super Bowl team. This team has more flaws than any other team that Bill Belichick has taken to the big game. With that said, when you have a combination of Belichick and Brady in one game, you still have to give this team a puncher's chance. Because Belichick is a genius on the defensive side of the ball, and because Tom Brady is going to go down as one of the best all-time quarterbacks in league history, you know that New England will have something up its sleeve. The New York Giants have reminded me so much of the Green Bay Packers from a year ago. They've basically been in the playoffs for 6 weeks. They faced single elimination at the end of the regular season because a loss would have put them out of the postseason mix. So they felt that pressure late. They get into the playoffs, and they just seem to get better every week. And like the Packers a year ago, when they got to the Super Bowl, you felt like Green Bay, at that point, they were world beaters. And you feel the same way about the Giants, the growing confidence. And I think this team believes they're the better team, and it is such a completely different story from 4 years ago when these two teams met in the Super Bowl, the Giants pulling off the upset win over the Patriots.
It really is unbelievable that I don't know if I want to call it parody or not, but the fact that we see history repeating itself in so many different ways. You mentioned how the Giants are doing exactly what the Packers did last season. They're making a run similar to what happened in 2007. And we've seen teams that have had, per se, dynasties who have tried to revive them in a bit of a way that the Patriots have and kind of limped into the Super Bowl or deep into the playoffs. And I think that's part of the beauty of sports, that you see history repeat itself in so many different ways. And I got to tell you, it's what makes this Super Bowl that much more intriguing. And So what is different about this matchup as opposed to '07, other than the fact that this Patriots team is certainly not undefeated and the Giants do not have David Tyree?
I think Eli Manning is at a stage in his career where he is locked in. There's a belief. There was always an inner belief, but there was a skepticism around New York and the rest of the NFL that Eli was in that upper echelon group of quarterbacks. Well, now that question is no longer being asked because he's answered it. He has been so good, so impressive in this postseason run. He has made throws that only a few men on earth can make. Did it against Atlanta, did it against Green Bay. He was a steadying influence, didn't panic against the San Francisco 49ers. And what I find ironic is all of the things that Eli was criticized for early in his career here in the New York area. He's not much of a leader. He doesn't have a pulse. Where's
the fire in his belly,
enthusiasm? Yeah. Right, all of that came under fire. And now, here we are, in his point of his career as a veteran, where he is being applauded for those same exact characteristics. Oh, he doesn't buckle under pressure. He never gets too high, never gets too low. It's just funny how the story can be rewritten based on the circumstances. And Eli has certainly done an excellent job leading this team and getting himself into a path now. If he wins this Super Bowl, he will join a very select group of former New York athletes or current New York athletes that can do no wrong, no matter what they do the rest of their career. Joe Namath, Mark Mestier, Derek Jeter. If Eli Manning wins this Super Bowl,
right,
in New York sports history, he's going to join that select group, a pantheon of athletes, and only a few can truly say that they've made that list in New York sports history.
Now let's talk about some implications here as you're kind of leading towards. First off, I think it's fair to say that Ian Eagle believes that Eli Manning is elite in fact, correct?
I do. Everything that I've seen this year cemented that, yes.
So let's talk about these implications. You're saying how he becomes one of those forgiven heroes that regardless, he can do no wrong. If Eli Manning wins a Super Bowl this year, does that make him definitively the greatest New York Giants quarterback of all time?
I think it does. I think it does. And the totality of his career will have to play out. But I would tell you that if Eli did not come back to play another down in a Giant uniform, that he would have to go down as number one among those players at that position in franchise history, yes.
A bold statement from Mr. Eagle. Now another bold statement I'm asking to make here. This one's been making the rounds. You know, a lot of people are talking in week 15 or so, man, Tom Coughlin will be lucky if he's back next year. Now, I know you've spoken to Mr. Coughlin many times. I've even been privileged enough through your program to meet Mr. Coughlin. Tremendous guy, tremendous head coach. With a second Super Bowl victory, is he a Hall of Famer?
Great question. First off, I never really bought into the idea that Tom was coaching for his job in Week 15, Week 16. I just didn't believe that. That's not how the Maras operate.
Absolutely agreed.
I didn't think it was going to come down to one game against the Dallas Cowboys to determine whether or not Tom Coughlin returns as head coach. Now, we could question whether or not he would get an extension, whether he was going to be here long term. Maybe at that point, the Maras would have been looking into an alternative plan and an exit strategy eventually to move on to someone else. But I never thought that it was going to come down to one game to determine his fate as Big Blue head coach. Second part of the question, I think it does. I think Tom Coughlin, if he wins this Super Bowl, his second as the Giant head coach, his success at Jacksonville, taking over a new franchise.
And leading them in the second year.
That has to be put into the equation. When you take over an expansion team and have the success that he had in Jacksonville, never getting to the Super Bowl, but winning a lot of games and contending pretty quickly in today's NFL climate, combining those two aspects of his career, I believe that it would be enough to get him into Canton, yes.
And, you know, you got to take into factor, you mentioned all the success he had. Second year there in Jacksonville leads them to the AFC Championship. And that's just, it's tremendous story as it is. And, you know, you could even extend the, how should I say this, the contributions that the Giants have received. You could issue that thanks also to Jerry Reese, who this season didn't buckle when he saw guys like Steve Smith jump ship, Kevin Boss jump ship. Do you have any thoughts on that?
There was a resolve there from Jerry Reese, and I think what ends up happening a lot, especially in this day and age, with the amount of information that's out there via Twitter, blogs, podcasts, talk radio, 24-hour sports networks, people jump to conclusions and just assume that's the predominant opinion. And there seemed to be this opinion in the sports world, in the NFL world, specifically, that Jerry Reese did not do a good job during the offseason. He did not upgrade the roster. And a lot of people started to criticize him early in the season. Due diligence wasn't there. I thought Jerry showed a lot of resolve, and it just goes to show you, just because things are being bandied about at an alarming rate in our world, the media world and the fans world, doesn't mean that it necessarily gets to the bubble that is a professional sports team. I don't think Jerry Reese for a moment changed his opinion. He felt this roster was playoff worthy,